Kickback is the one thing that catches beginners off guard on the table saw. And it happens fast, but it's easy to avoid if you know what to look for. In this video, I'll walk you through the setup, the first safe cuts, and the habits that'll keep your hands and your projects on track. The table saw is one of the most versatile tools in woodworking, and really it's the central tool of the entire shop. It's used for making precise cuts, including rip cuts, that is cutting along the grain, cross cuts, cutting against the grain, and even bevel cuts, which is an angle cut in this direction. But it also can be intimidating, especially if you've never used one before. And that's why it's so important to understand the fundamentals first. Let's start with the main parts of the table saw. First is the blade. This is a 10-inch circular blade, and it's the heart of the saw. You can change it depending on the type of cut or material you're working with. Choose the rip fence. This guides your material for rip cuts. It needs to be parallel to the blade to ensure accuracy and safety, and we'll talk about that more later on. Next up is the miter gauge. This helps you to make cross cuts and angled cuts. It works by riding in the miter gauge slots, and there's two of them, one blade left and one blade right. The blade guard and splitter are next. These are safety features which protect you from accidentally contacting the blade with your hand, and it really helps to reduce kickback. Last is push sticks. These things are amazing and they are a must. They keep your hands safe by helping you guide the material through the blade. Just a quick note before we get into it, you do not have to have a table saw like mine to be able to learn from this video. This is a more advanced saw, it's more expensive, but all the techniques and everything that we're going to be talking about today will apply to almost any new table saw that you purchase. Also, lastly, I'm going to remove the blade guard just for filming purposes so you guys can see a little bit more detail. Please use this whenever possible. And speaking of safety, before we even begin using the saw, let's cover a few items. The first is safety gear, in particular safety glasses. It's always a good idea to wear them. Saws of any type love to kick back sawdust, so keeping your eyes safe is crucial. Hearing protection is next. It's optional, but it is suggested, especially for beginners. When you reduce the audible sound of the machine, it actually helps to reduce your anxiety and any nervousness you have about using the machine for the first time. Number two is to keep your workspace clean. Remove any clutter or offcuts around the saw is a must. And three, use a push stick. You've already seen a few of mine. Use them especially when cutting narrow pieces to keep your hands away from the blade. Number four is check blade alignment. Always ensure that the blade is parallel to the rip fence to prevent binding or kickback. Next is stand to the side of the saw. Never put your body in front of the blade itself. Always step off to the side just in case the saw decides to kick something back. It passes by you instead of hitting you. And lastly, always use at least the riving knife. There will be times, more times than you realize now, when you'll need to remove the blade guard to make certain cuts. When that time comes, it's critical that you install the riving knife. It serves a similar purpose to the splitter that's attached to the blade guard. The riving knife helps to prevent kickback, one of the most dangerous things that can happen on the table saw. Kickback occurs when the material binds or twists between the blade and the fence, causing it to launch backwards towards you with force. And we'll talk more about kickback and how to avoid it when we start using the saw. So now that we've covered the main parts of the table saw and we covered a few safety items, let's go ahead and move into how to properly set this thing up before you start using it and putting some practice in. For beginners, proper setup is critical. First is rip fence alignment. In most cases, you can do this by aligning the fence with the miter gauge slot, like this. However, the miter gauge slots must be in line with the blade. Some saws allow you to make that adjustment, but on most beginner saws, it's either not possible or not necessary. And this is the second time I've mentioned fence alignment because it's that important, and it's the cause of a lot of beginners' problems. To adjust this, most fences have a few screws that allow for fine tuning. If you find other issues around the blade not being in alignment with the miter gauge slots, drop me a comment below or use your owner's manual to make those adjustments. And lastly, the blade height. Set the blade so that it's about 1/8 of an inch higher than the material you're cutting. Now let's practice. Getting comfortable with your saw takes some time, so here are a few exercises to help you to build your confidence. First is straight rip cuts. Start with a piece of plywood or softwood and set the rip fence to a specific width. Keep the material flush against the fence and use a push stick as your fingers near the blade. This not only keeps your hands safe, but it also helps to maintain consistent pressure and alignment. This is also where kickback can show up if you're not careful. Kickback happens again when the material binds between the blade and the fence, especially during a rip cut. If the board twists even slightly or drifts away from the fence and then catches the rear of the blade's rotation can grab it and launch it back towards you fast. This is why the riving knife is so important. It helps keep the kerf or the cut slot open and prevents the two sides of the board from pinching the blade. The second exercise is crosscuts using a miter gauge. Use a small board or a piece of plywood and guide it across the blade with the miter gauge. Start with 90-degree cuts and get a feel, then try a few angles like 30 or 40 or 45 degrees and see how the blade handles different positions. It's important though that you never use the miter gauge and the rip fence together during a crosscut. That's a major setup for kickback. If the wood is trapped between the miter gauge and the fence, it can get twisted, bound, and thrown back towards you. Always use one or the other, not both at the same time. Next is bevel cuts. Tilt the blade of the saw this time to 30 or 40 degrees and practice cutting edges for miter joints. You'll notice how the blade's tilt affects how the material runs through the saw. You may even notice that the material might be harder to keep tight to the fence compared to a straight rip cut. Keep in mind that bevel cuts can be trickier to control, especially when ripping, because the blade is now cutting at an angle which increases the chance for binding, especially if the workpiece isn't staying firmly against the fence. Again, this is where a riving knife earns its keep, keeping the cut open and the workpiece stable. The fourth exercise is using stop blocks. Set up a stop block on your rip fence when you need to make repeatable cuts. For example, if you're cutting multiple pieces at exactly 6 inches, a stop block gives you consistency and speed. But here's the key. Set up your stop block behind the blade, not directly in line with it. That way, when the piece is cut, the offcut has room to fall away cleanly. If the stop block is too close to the blade, it can trap the offcut, creating tension, binding, and you guessed it, an opportunity for kickback. Small details like this can make a very big difference in safety. The last thing is offcut awareness. One of the most common mistakes new woodworkers make is reaching for the offcuts near a spinning blade. Don't do that. Get in the habit of letting the offcuts fall away naturally or pushing them aside only after the blade has come to a complete stop. Smaller pieces, especially narrow offcuts, can also be pulled into the blade or kicked back unexpectedly if they can get trapped. So if you're cutting narrow pieces, try not to have it between the fence and the blade, but on the other side where it is free to fall away. Practicing good techniques here trains your eye to anticipate movement and teaches your hands to stay out of danger. Final note on kickback. It's most often caused by cutting without a riving knife or splitter, twisting or lifting the board mid-cut, using the fence improperly, especially during crosscuts, and last, allowing material to bind, especially near the back of the blade. Always respect the table saw and know that every cut is a chance to build good habits. Practicing isn't just about muscle memory. However, that is extremely important. But it can be more about getting used to what the saw is able to do and how it responds to what you do with it. So for example, I encourage you to practice with different types of wood, hardwoods and softwoods. Practice with different feed rates. Try running something through a little bit faster or a little bit slower. And attune your ear to the sounds that the saw is making when you're pushing it too fast or too slow, or if you're twisting as you're going. You'll hear the pitch of the saw change, and you may visually also see some burning marks or some indications that the saw blade is binding a bit against the side of the wood. It is all about practice, and don't worry about making mistakes. You're going to learn from them. Let's quickly look at 4 common beginner mistakes to avoid. First, skipping alignment checks. Always double check your fence and the blade are aligned before starting. Everything the manufacturer recommends upon setup and what they suggest for maintenance is key. 2, using a dull blade. A sharp blade is safer and gives cleaner cuts. 3, rushing the cut. Take your time and guide the material smoothly, and be sure that the material is all the way through the saw first before you reach in to remove it. It's very easy to rush a cut and get yourself into trouble with some kickback or a workpiece that gets damaged. And lastly, number 4, not using safety equipment. Push sticks, blade guards, and riving knives are there for a reason. Use them. The table saw is the cornerstone tool to carpentry and woodworking. And with a little bit of practice, you will get more and more comfortable with this saw, and your projects will become more and more advanced. But don't forget, you're a beginner. I was a beginner. Every good, seasoned, expert carpenter and woodworker was a beginner. And it's just about practice, learning the saw, being patient, and being okay with making mistakes. So go out today and make some mistakes. Well, thank you for making it to the end of the video. I appreciate you watching. Please drop a comment and give a thumbs up. It really helps to build the channel up and to show that YouTube that this content is relevant. If you are not aware, I do have a free online woodworking and carpentry community. It's completely free, so I'll leave a link below. You can come and join there. If you need help, I'm in there all the time answering questions. If you have any other needs, prayer requests, I'm here for you. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.